Forward. Most people believe that the story ends the moment you walk away from a narcissist. They assume the narcissist simply shrugs, finds someone new, forward, and never thinks about you again. That belief sounds convincing. It is repeated everywhere. But psychology tells a far more unsettling story. Forward. There is a moment that many people never see. It happens quietly. It happens after the arguments stop, after the messages go unanswered, after the emotional chase disappears. Forward. It is the moment a narcissist realizes that your silence is real. You are not trying to teach them a lesson. You are not waiting for an apology. Forward. You are not hoping they will suddenly change. You are simply gone. That realization can trigger a chain reaction inside them that most people never recognize. Forward. The confidence that once looked unshakable can begin to crack. The certainty that they could always pull you back can slowly disappear. Forward. In its place comes something they work very hard to hide: confusion, frustration, fear of losing control. And once that process begins, forward, many narcissists move through a series of surprisingly predictable psychological stages. Forward. Most people spend months trying to understand why a narcissist acted the way they did during the relationship. Far fewer people stop to ask a different question. Forward. What happens inside the narcissist after they realize they no longer control your emotions? Forward. That question has fascinated psychologists for years because the answer often challenges everything people think they know about narcissistic behavior. Forward. The real turning point is usually not the breakup itself. It is the moment the narcissist understands that their usual methods no longer work. They expect another argument. Forward. They expect another emotional reaction. They expect another chance to pull you back into the same cycle. Then something unexpected happens. Nothing. Your silence continues. Forward. Your attention disappears. Your emotional energy is no longer available to them. That is when the psychological balance begins to shift. Forward. One of the biggest misconceptions about narcissism is that narcissists never feel emotional distress after losing someone. That belief is far too simple. Forward. Research and clinical observations suggest that many people with strong narcissistic traits can experience intense emotional reactions when they lose a source of validation or influence. Forward. The important detail, however, is that these reactions often look very different from healthy grief or genuine remorse. This is where many people become confused. Forward. They mistake sudden contact, emotional messages, unexpected kindness, or dramatic apologies as proof of deep love. In reality, forward, those behaviors can sometimes be driven by something else entirely. They may reflect an attempt to restore a damaged sense of control, repair a threatened self-image, forward, or regain a reliable source of admiration and attention. That difference changes everything. Forward. This is also why many survivors describe feeling confused long after the relationship ends. They receive mixed signals that seem impossible to explain. Forward. One day the narcissist acts distant and completely unaffected. The next day they suddenly appear desperate to reconnect. Then they become cold again, then charming. Forward. Then angry, then strangely emotional. To someone looking from the outside, these dramatic shifts can appear random. Forward. But they often follow recognizable psychological patterns. Beneath the surface, forward, there is frequently a struggle between maintaining an image of superiority and confronting the uncomfortable reality that someone has finally escaped their emotional influence. Forward. Another lesser-known fact is that narcissistic behavior is often built around predictability. Forward. Many narcissists become skilled at learning how people around them respond emotionally. Over time, they begin to expect those reactions. Forward. They expect reassurance after criticism. They expect forgiveness after hurtful behavior. They expect emotional pursuit after creating distance. Forward. These repeated cycles create a powerful sense of confidence. The narcissist starts believing they fully understand the emotional map of the relationship. Forward. That confidence becomes part of their identity. Then, one day, the pattern breaks. You stop responding the way you always did. You stop explaining yourself. Forward. You stop defending your choices. You stop seeking closure from someone who never intended to give it. Suddenly, the emotional map they relied upon no longer works. Forward. That loss of predictability can become deeply unsettling. Forward. Many experts who study narcissistic personality patterns point out that narcissistic confidence often depends on external validation more than people realize. Forward. The image they present to the world may appear strong, fearless, and completely self-assured. Yet, beneath that carefully maintained exterior, forward, there can be a constant need for admiration, attention, or emotional confirmation. Forward. This does not mean every narcissist experiences the same emotions or reacts in identical ways. Human behavior is always more complex than a single explanation. Forward. Narcissistic traits exist on a spectrum, and every individual has a different history, personality, and level of self-awareness. Forward. That is why this video is not about labeling every difficult person as a narcissist. Forward. It is about understanding recurring psychological patterns that researchers and clinicians have observed in individuals with significant narcissistic traits. Forward. One mistake people often make is assuming that love and control always look the same. They do not. Genuine attachment allows another person to make independent choices, forward, even when those choices are painful. Control, on the other hand, depends on predictable emotional responses. When those responses disappear, forward, the person seeking control often becomes far more distressed than expected. This is why many people become shocked when a narcissist suddenly reappears months later, forward, sends an unexpected message, or begins acting in ways that seem completely different from before. They assume the narcissist has finally realized their mistakes. Forward. Sometimes that is true. More often, the reality is much more psychologically complicated. Forward. Another detail that many people overlook is that this realization rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It unfolds gradually. At first, there is disbelief, then uncertainty, forward, then growing anxiety, then increasingly desperate attempts to restore what has been lost. Each stage builds upon the one before it, forward, creating a psychological progression that can explain many confusing behaviors people experience after leaving a narcissistic relationship. Once you understand these stages, forward, actions that once seemed mysterious begin to make much more sense. Patterns become visible where there once appeared to be chaos. In this video, forward, you will discover the 5 psychological stages many narcissists move through when they realize you have truly given up. Forward. You will learn why silence often has a greater impact than confrontation. Forward. You will understand why some narcissists suddenly become unusually persistent after months of complete indifference. Forward. You will see why emotional reactions that look like love or regret may actually be driven by something very different. Most importantly, forward, you will discover why the fifth and final stage reveals the greatest truth of all. Forward. It exposes the difference between genuine attachment and the desperate need to regain control. That final stage explains why some narcissists eventually stop chasing, forward, why others return unexpectedly, and why your greatest source of strength is often the one thing they never expected you to find: emotional freedom. Forward. By the end of this video, you will see these behaviors through an entirely different lens. You will understand not only what happens inside the narcissist, forward, but also why recognizing these patterns can protect your own peace, strengthen your boundaries, and help you avoid being pulled back into the same cycle. Forward. If you want to understand the psychology behind these hidden stages and learn why the final one surprises so many people, then you are in the right place. Forward. Welcome to Avoidant Psychology. If you enjoy thoughtful, research-based insights into narcissistic behavior, attachment patterns, and emotional healing, forward, subscribe to the channel and join us as we uncover the psychology that most people never see. The first stage begins with something that looks like complete confidence. Forward. From the outside, the narcissist appears calm, unaffected, and even amused by your absence. They may act as though nothing important has happened. Forward. They continue with their daily routine. They post on social media. They laugh with friends. They may even appear happier than before. To someone watching from a distance, forward, it can seem as though they truly do not care. This is exactly why so many people become discouraged during the first days or weeks after walking away. Forward. They believe they meant nothing. But beneath that confident surface, a different psychological process is often beginning. The silence has been noticed. Forward. It simply has not been accepted yet. Forward. One of the strongest characteristics of narcissistic thinking is the belief that they understand people better than people understand themselves. Forward. After spending months or even years learning your emotional patterns, they become convinced they know exactly how you will react. Forward. They remember every time you returned after an argument. They remember every apology you accepted. Forward. They remember every moment when your loneliness became stronger than your anger. Those experiences create a powerful expectation. In their mind, history will repeat itself. Forward. They believe your current silence is simply another chapter in the same familiar cycle. They tell themselves that you only need more time. Soon enough, you will call. Forward. You will send a message. You will look for closure. You will miss them more than they miss you. Forward. That belief allows them to remain calm because they assume the outcome has already been decided. Forward. This confidence is not always based on reality. It is often based on repetition. Human psychology naturally forms expectations from repeated experiences. Forward. When one pattern happens again and again, the brain begins treating it as predictable. Narcissistic personalities frequently rely on this principle without even realizing it. Forward. Every previous reunion strengthens their belief that separation is temporary. Every time someone forgives them after being hurt, their confidence grows. Forward. Every emotional conversation reinforces the idea that they remain in control of the relationship. Over time, this confidence becomes part of their identity. Forward. They stop seeing reconciliation as a possibility. They begin seeing it as something inevitable. Forward. This is why your silence is usually interpreted in a very different way than you intended. While you may see it as acceptance, healing, or self-protection, forward, the narcissist often sees it as another emotional strategy. They assume you are trying to make them jealous. They believe you are waiting for them to chase you. Forward. They tell themselves you are trying to create mystery or increase your value. In many cases, they do not even consider the possibility that you have genuinely let go. Forward. That explanation feels too threatening to accept. Their mind searches for an interpretation that protects their confidence rather than challenges it. Forward. Psychologists sometimes describe this tendency as a form of self-protective thinking. Instead of immediately accepting information that damages their self-image, forward, the mind filters reality in a way that feels less painful. This is not unique to narcissism. Most people do it occasionally. Forward. The difference is that individuals with strong narcissistic traits often rely on this defense much more heavily because their sense of identity depends so strongly on feeling important, forward, admired, and influential. Accepting that someone willingly walked away forever creates a direct conflict with that identity. As a result, forward, denial becomes the easiest psychological solution. Forward. Another lesser-known detail is that inflated self-confidence often hides a fragile foundation. Many researchers believe that grandiosity functions like emotional armor. Forward. It protects the individual from feelings of shame, insecurity, or inadequacy. As long as they continue believing they are desired and irreplaceable, forward, that armor remains strong. During the first stage, they protect this armor by refusing to believe your absence is permanent. Forward. They convince themselves that you are simply emotional. They assume your determination will fade. They expect your loneliness to become stronger than your boundaries. Forward. Entitlement also plays an important role during this stage. Narcissistic personalities frequently develop the belief that they deserve special treatment. Forward. They expect exceptions. They expect second chances. They expect forgiveness that they may never offer someone else. Forward. This sense of entitlement shapes the way they interpret your behavior. Rather than asking whether they pushed you too far, forward, they often ask why you are taking so long to come back. Rather than reflecting on the damage they caused, they focus on when the relationship will return to normal. Forward. This difference explains why genuine self-examination is often delayed. Their attention remains fixed on their expectations instead of your reality. Forward. There is another reason denial feels so convincing. It protects them from emotional discomfort. Forward. Accepting loss requires facing painful emotions that threaten their carefully constructed identity. Denial delays that experience. Forward. It creates temporary emotional distance between the event and its psychological impact. During this period, forward, they may appear unusually patient because they believe time is working in their favor. Forward. Every passing day is interpreted as preparation for your return rather than evidence of your independence. Forward. This false confidence can also produce behaviors that seem confusing. Some narcissists intentionally wait before contacting someone. Forward. They believe remaining silent increases their value. They assume you will become anxious first. Forward. Others quietly monitor your life through mutual friends or social media, while making no direct effort to reconnect. Forward. They believe gathering information is enough because they still expect you to make the first move. They watch for signs of weakness. Forward. They look for hints that your resolve is fading. Each ordinary event is interpreted through the belief that you are still emotionally connected to them. Forward. Yet reality has a way of challenging even the strongest illusions. Days turn into weeks. Weeks become months. The expected message never arrives. Forward. The emotional reactions they counted on never appear. The familiar relationship pattern begins to break apart, and with every unanswered expectation, forward. The confidence that once felt unshakable starts to develop its first small cracks. The second stage begins so quietly that many people never notice it. Forward. There is no dramatic confession. There is no sudden admission that something is wrong. Instead, the certainty that once seemed unbreakable starts to weaken. Forward. The narcissist expected your silence to end quickly. They believed time would pull you back into the same emotional pattern. Yet each passing day tells a different story. Forward. You are still not reaching out. You are not defending yourself. You are not reacting to their absence. Slowly, the explanation they trusted begins to fall apart. Forward. This is the moment when confidence starts giving way to uncertainty. And uncertainty is something many narcissistic personalities find deeply uncomfortable. Forward. Human beings naturally depend on predictability. The brain constantly searches for patterns because patterns create a sense of safety and control. Forward. When those patterns suddenly disappear, stress often follows. Forward. This effect becomes even stronger in people whose emotional stability depends heavily on controlling their environment. For many individuals with strong narcissistic traits, forward, predictable emotional responses from other people become part of that sense of stability. They expect admiration after success. Forward. They expect attention after creating distance. They expect emotional pursuit after pulling away. These reactions become so familiar that they almost feel guaranteed. Forward. Then your silence removes that certainty. The emotional script they relied upon no longer works. At first, forward, they try to explain the situation in ways that protect their confidence. They tell themselves you are busy. They assume you are trying to prove a point. Forward. They believe you are waiting for the perfect moment to return. But as more time passes, these explanations begin losing their strength. Forward. The mind starts searching for new answers. Questions quietly replace certainty. Why has nothing changed? Why are you not reacting the way you always did? Forward. Why does the usual pattern suddenly feel broken? Those questions may never be spoken aloud, but they begin creating pressure beneath the surface. Forward. One lesser-known fact about narcissistic behavior is that emotional influence often becomes a source of psychological reassurance. Forward. This is closely connected to the concept of narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply refers to the attention, admiration, validation, or emotional energy that helps support an inflated sense of self. Many people assume this only means praise and compliments. In reality, the picture is much more complicated. Anger, fear, jealousy, and emotional arguments can also serve a similar purpose, because they confirm that the narcissist still occupies an important place in someone else's mind. Forward. Even negative attention can reinforce their belief that they remain significant. Forward. This is why complete silence can become surprisingly powerful. Silence offers no emotional confirmation. There is no argument to win, no tears to analyze. Forward. No apology to reject, no emotional reaction to feed on. Instead, there is uncertainty. For someone accustomed to measuring influence through other people's responses, forward, uncertainty becomes deeply unsettling. They begin wondering whether they still matter to you at all. Forward. That possibility creates a type of psychological discomfort they often try very hard to escape. As anxiety grows, subtle forms of checking often begin. Forward. These actions are rarely obvious at first. They may look at your social media more frequently without interacting. Forward. They may ask mutual friends casual questions that seem innocent on the surface. They may suddenly become interested in places they know you visit. Forward. Sometimes they post carefully chosen photographs or messages designed to attract attention without directly contacting you. None of these actions openly admit concern. Forward. Instead, they function like quiet experiments. The real question hiding behind each one is simple. Will you react? This testing behavior reveals something important. Forward. During the first stage, they assumed your return was inevitable. During the second stage, they start collecting evidence because certainty has disappeared. Forward. Every possible clue becomes meaningful. If someone mentions your name, they pay attention. If they hear you started a new hobby, they become curious. Forward. If they learn you seem happier, that information can create unexpected discomfort. They begin searching for signs that they still occupy space in your emotional world. Forward. Another surprising detail is that many narcissists become especially alert when they receive no information at all. Most people believe bad news is the hardest to hear. Forward. In many cases, uncertainty creates even greater psychological tension. The human brain dislikes unanswered questions. Forward. Researchers have found that uncertainty can activate stress responses because the brain keeps searching for missing information. Forward. For a narcissistic personality that values control, uncertainty can feel especially threatening. The less they know about your thoughts, forward, the more difficult it becomes to predict your next move. Forward. Their behavior may also become strangely inconsistent during this stage. One day they appear completely indifferent. The next day they seem unusually active online. Forward. Then they disappear again. These shifts often reflect an internal struggle. Part of them still wants to believe they remain in control. Forward. Another part is beginning to recognize that control may already be slipping away. The result is hesitation. They wait, they observe, they test, they pull back again. Forward. Every action becomes an attempt to reduce uncertainty without fully exposing their growing concern. Forward. This stage also explains why some narcissists suddenly become interested in appearing successful or unusually happy. They may post achievements, new relationships, forward, expensive purchases, or exciting experiences more often than before. While these actions can have many motivations, they sometimes serve another psychological purpose. Forward. They become silent invitations for you to notice them. The hope is that curiosity, jealousy, or nostalgia will draw you back into interaction. If you respond, even briefly, forward, they receive confirmation that their influence still exists. When no response comes, the discomfort grows stronger. Their internal questions become harder to ignore. Forward. The emotional distance they once dismissed as temporary now feels increasingly real. The familiar rhythm of the relationship has disappeared, replaced by uncertainty that refuses to go away. For someone who built confidence on always knowing how another person would react, losing that ability creates a quiet form of panic that continues spreading beneath the surface, pushing them toward actions they once believed they would never need to take. By the time the third stage begins, something important has changed. The quiet waiting is no longer enough. The silent observations no longer bring reassurance. Every indirect attempt to measure your emotions has failed to produce the response they expected. Your silence has continued. Your boundaries have remained firm. The uncertainty that once stayed hidden beneath the surface now becomes much harder to ignore. This is often the point where the narcissist stops watching from a distance and starts trying to influence the situation directly. Their behavior becomes more active, more emotional, and sometimes far more confusing than anything that came before. Many people believe these sudden changes mean the narcissist has finally realized your value. That interpretation is understandable. But psychology often points to a more complicated explanation. The growing urgency is not always driven by love or genuine self-reflection. It is frequently driven by the uncomfortable realization that their influence is fading. For someone who built confidence on being able to predict and shape another person's emotional responses, losing that ability creates a powerful sense of instability. The mind immediately begins searching for ways to restore balance. One of the first strategies often involves charm. Messages suddenly become warmer. Old memories are mentioned. Compliments appear after months of criticism. They may speak about the good times while quietly ignoring the painful ones. Some become unusually polite. Others express affection that seemed completely absent during the relationship. These moments can feel deeply convincing because they appear at exactly the time you least expect them. Yet, timing itself is often part of the pattern. When previous methods stop working, a different emotional approach takes their place. If kindness fails to reopen communication, another strategy may quickly replace it. Guilt becomes the next tool. The narcissist may remind you of sacrifices they made. They may describe themselves as misunderstood or abandoned. They may suggest that you are being unfair, cold, or unforgiving. Sometimes the message is subtle. Other times it is direct. The goal is not necessarily to resolve the conflict. The goal is to awaken responsibility, sympathy, or emotional obligations strong enough to pull you back into conversation. When guilt does not succeed, blame often follows. Suddenly, the story changes. The problems become your fault. Your boundaries are described as cruelty. Your healing is labeled selfishness. Your silence is treated as evidence that you never cared. This shift confuses many people because it seems to contradict the kindness shown only days earlier. Yet these contradictions reveal something important. The emotional strategy keeps changing because the real objective has not changed. The narcissist is searching for whichever approach creates the strongest reaction. Provocation becomes another common tactic during this stage. Some narcissists intentionally say hurtful things that seem unnecessary. Others spread rumors, criticize publicly, or create situations designed to trigger jealousy or anger. At first glance, these actions appear self-destructive. Forward. Why would someone intentionally create more distance? The answer lies in a psychological truth that many people overlook. Forward. From the perspective of someone desperate to restore influence, even an angry response confirms that emotional control has not completely disappeared. Forward. Silence offers no reassurance. Anger, however, proves they can still affect your emotions. Forward. Researchers who study interpersonal dynamics have long observed that human attention carries psychological value. Positive attention usually feels rewarding. Forward. Negative attention often feels painful. Yet for individuals who fear becoming emotionally irrelevant, negative attention can sometimes feel preferable to complete absence. Forward. An argument is still a connection. A defensive message is still engagement. A heated conversation still places them at the center of your emotional world. Forward. Complete indifference removes that position entirely. And for many narcissistic personalities, that loss feels far more threatening. Forward. This helps explain why their behavior during this stage often appears inconsistent. One day they apologize sincerely. The next day they insult you. Then they disappear. Forward. Then they return acting as though nothing happened. These rapid shifts are not always carefully planned. They often reflect internal conflict. Forward. Each unsuccessful attempt creates frustration. The next strategy becomes more intense because the previous one failed. Hope changes into irritation. Forward. Irritation changes into desperation. Desperation creates impulsive decisions that may even surprise the narcissist themselves. Forward. Another lesser-known detail is that emotional unpredictability can sometimes be used as a form of psychological pressure. During the relationship, forward, sudden changes in affection or attention may have kept you focused on winning back approval. In this stage, similar patterns can reappear. Forward. Unexpected compliments are followed by cold silence. Friendly conversations suddenly become hostile. Promises quickly disappear. Forward. These dramatic shifts keep the emotional atmosphere unstable. Stability gives you confidence. Confusion often keeps people emotionally engaged. Forward. Whether intentional or habitual, this instability can make it harder for someone to maintain clear boundaries if they do not recognize the pattern. Forward. Some narcissists also begin testing completely different paths back into your life. They may contact mutual friends. Forward. They may mention shared memories through indirect conversations. They may create situations where accidental encounters become more likely. Forward. Others suddenly display dramatic personal change, hoping you will believe they have transformed overnight. Forward. Real personal growth is possible for anyone willing to accept responsibility and commit to long-term change. However, forward, lasting transformation requires consistent accountability, not isolated emotional gestures that appear only after influence has been lost. Forward. At the center of all these changing behaviors lies the same psychological purpose. Restoring influence becomes more important than resolving the relationship itself. Forward. Genuine repair requires empathy, accountability, and respect for another person's choices. The behaviors seen during this stage often revolve around something different. Forward. They revolve around reopening emotional access. Once communication begins again, the narcissist gains another opportunity to measure your feelings, test your boundaries, forward, and determine whether their psychological hold still exists. Forward. As each attempt produces little or no response, the pressure inside continues to build. The confidence that once supported every decision has almost disappeared. Forward. The strategies that worked for years no longer produce familiar results. The emotional control they believed would always be available slips further away. Forward. Forcing them toward a confrontation they have spent their entire lives trying to avoid. Forward. The possibility that someone they believed they understood completely has become impossible to predict. Forward. The fourth stage is often the most difficult for the narcissist because the illusion that protected them for so long begins to break apart. Until this point, forward, there was always another explanation. They believed you would return. They believed another message would change everything. Forward. They believed another emotional strategy would pull you back into the familiar cycle. But now the evidence becomes harder to deny. Forward. Your silence has lasted longer than expected. Your boundaries have remained consistent. Your life continues without them at the center of it. For the first time, forward, they begin facing a possibility they spent weeks or even months avoiding. The relationship may truly be over. This realization does not simply mean losing a partner. Forward. For many people with strong narcissistic traits, it can feel like losing part of the identity they carefully built around themselves. That distinction is extremely important. Forward. Healthy relationships become part of a person's life, but they do not define the person's entire sense of worth. Forward. Narcissistic personalities often build their self-image on external confirmation. Admiration, attention, influence. Forward. And emotional importance become evidence that they are exceptional. When one of those sources disappears permanently, forward, the loss reaches much deeper than the relationship itself. It begins touching the very image they hold of who they are. Forward. Many psychologists describe this experience as a narcissistic injury. This does not refer to a physical wound. Forward. It describes the emotional pain that can occur when reality directly challenges an inflated self-image. The injury is not always caused by harsh criticism. Forward. Sometimes it is created by something much quieter. Indifference. Emotional independence. Forward. A person who no longer seeks approval sends a powerful message without saying a single word. The message is simple. You no longer control my emotional world. Forward. For someone who relied on that influence to support their identity, this realization can feel deeply unsettling. Forward. One lesser-known fact is that rejection affects the brain in ways that resemble physical pain. Forward. Brain imaging studies have shown that social rejection can activate some of the same neural regions involved in processing physical discomfort. Forward. This does not mean every narcissist experiences rejection in the same way. Personal history, emotional maturity, and personality all influence the response. Forward. Yet for individuals whose self-worth depends heavily on external validation. Forward. Rejection can become especially threatening because it challenges both emotional security and personal identity at the same time. Forward. The internal conflict often becomes stronger during this stage. On one side stands the grandiose self-image. This part insists they are superior, unforgettable, forward, and impossible to replace. On the other side stands reality. Reality says someone has moved on. Someone no longer reacts. Forward. Someone has stopped participating in the emotional cycle that once seemed permanent. These two realities cannot easily exist together. Forward. The mind struggles to reduce the contradiction, and that struggle creates intense psychological pressure. This pressure can produce a wide range of emotions. Forward. Shame is one possibility. Shame differs from ordinary guilt. Guilt focuses on behavior. Shame often attacks identity itself. Rather than thinking, I made a mistake, forward, the experience becomes something is wrong with me. Because shame feels so painful, many narcissistic personalities work very hard to avoid it. Forward. They may quickly transform shame into anger because anger feels more powerful and easier to control. Forward. This is one reason sudden hostility sometimes appears after weeks of apparent calm. Forward. Humiliation may also become part of the experience. Narcissistic personalities often care deeply about how they appear to others. Forward. The idea that someone willingly walked away can feel like a public defeat, even if nobody else knows the details. Forward. They may begin wondering whether mutual friends are judging them. They may worry that their image has been damaged. Forward. Sometimes this concern becomes stronger than the emotional loss itself. Protecting reputation becomes another attempt to protect identity. Forward. Confusion also plays an important role. For a long time, they believed they understood you completely. They believed they could predict every emotional response. Forward. Now, those predictions have failed repeatedly. This creates a difficult question. If they misunderstood you this deeply, how much else have they misunderstood? Forward. Questions like these rarely remain comfortable. Instead of calmly exploring them, the mind often searches for quicker emotional escape routes. Forward. That is why behavior during this stage can become remarkably unpredictable. Some narcissists suddenly disappear without explanation. Forward. They withdraw because facing reality feels overwhelming. Others become unusually emotional. They express sadness, fear, or vulnerability that seemed impossible before. Forward. Some become intensely angry. Others become strangely quiet. A few swing rapidly between several emotional states within a short period of time. Forward. These reactions are not identical because no two people respond in exactly the same way. Forward. The important pattern is the growing instability created by the collapse of earlier certainty. Forward. Another surprising detail is that emotional collapse does not always look dramatic. Many people expect tears, emotional speeches, or obvious desperation. Forward. Sometimes the collapse is hidden behind even greater arrogance. The narcissist may exaggerate achievements, boast more than usual, or quickly begin another relationship. Forward. These actions can create the appearance of confidence while serving as psychological protection against feelings they do not want to face. Forward. Looking powerful becomes a way of avoiding emotional vulnerability. Forward. Some individuals also begin rewriting the history of the relationship during this stage. They minimize positive memories. They exaggerate your flaws. Forward. They convince themselves they never truly cared. This process helps reduce emotional discomfort because it creates a story that supports their damaged self-image. Forward. If the relationship becomes meaningless in their mind, then losing it appears less painful. Forward. Whether this narrative reflects reality becomes less important than whether it protects their identity. Forward. As reality continues pressing against the defenses they have relied on for so long, the psychological tension reaches one of its highest points. Forward. The familiar strategies have failed. The confidence that once defined them has weakened. Forward. The emotional influence they assumed would always remain has slipped beyond their reach. Forward. Standing between the person they believed themselves to be and the reality unfolding before them. Forward. They approach a final crossroads where every remaining choice reveals far more about their inner world than they ever intended anyone to see. Forward. The fifth stage begins when reality becomes impossible to avoid. Every strategy that once seemed reliable has failed. The waiting did not bring you back. Forward. The indirect messages produced no response. The charm, guilt, blame, and emotional pressure no longer created the reaction they expected. Forward. The pattern that supported their confidence for so long has finally broken. At this point, many narcissists recognize, at least on some level, forward, that they cannot regain influence through the methods that always worked before. This realization does not guarantee insight or personal growth. Forward. It simply marks the moment when old strategies stop producing familiar results. Forward. From here, the path often divides in different directions. One possible response is acceptance, but this word can be misleading. Forward. Acceptance does not always mean emotional maturity or genuine understanding. Sometimes it simply means recognizing that continuing the chase no longer serves a purpose. Forward. The narcissist may stop contacting you. They may stop checking for responses. They may appear completely indifferent. To someone watching from the outside, forward, this silence can look like healing. In reality, silence alone reveals very little about what is happening beneath the surface. Forward. A person can stop reaching out while still avoiding responsibility for everything that happened. Another common response is seeking new sources of validation. Forward. This pattern is frequently misunderstood. Many people believe a narcissist enters a new relationship because they completely forgot the previous one. Forward. Psychology often offers a more complex explanation. Individuals with strong narcissistic traits may rely heavily on external admiration, attention, forward, or emotional engagement to stabilize their self-image. When one source disappears permanently, the search for another can begin quickly. This is not always about love. Forward. It is often about restoring emotional certainty and rebuilding the identity that felt threatened by rejection. Forward. This explains why some narcissists appear to move forward with surprising speed. They may become active socially. They may surround themselves with new people. Forward. They may present an image of happiness and confidence that seems almost impossible after everything that happened. Forward. These actions can certainly reflect genuine new beginnings in some situations. However, they can also function as psychological protection. Forward. Filling the empty space with new attention may feel easier than confronting painful emotions that remain unresolved. There is also another path that surprises many people. Forward. Just when you believe the story has ended, the narcissist returns one final time. The message may sound sincere. The words may express regret. Forward. They may speak about personal change, missed opportunities, or lessons learned. Sometimes they apologize in ways they never did before. Forward. Other times they simply ask how you are doing after months or even years of complete silence. Forward. These moments often create intense emotional confusion because they seem to arrive without warning. Forward. The important question is not whether contact happens. The important question is why it happens. Genuine personal growth is possible for anyone. Human beings can change. Forward. They can become more self-aware. They can learn healthier ways to relate to others. But meaningful change rarely appears overnight. Forward. It usually requires honest self-reflection, consistent accountability, professional support when needed. Forward. And a willingness to examine painful truths without shifting blame onto someone else. Temporary emotional reactions, no matter how dramatic they appear, forward, are not the same as lasting transformation. Forward. One lesser-known fact about personality patterns is that they tend to repeat unless the underlying beliefs and emotional habits are addressed. A person may change partners, forward, careers, friendships, or environments, yet continue experiencing similar conflicts because the deeper psychological patterns remain untouched. Forward. This is one reason experts often emphasize long-term therapeutic work for individuals with deeply ingrained narcissistic traits. Forward. Sustainable change requires far more than regret after losing someone. Forward. It requires accepting responsibility without demanding immediate forgiveness or expecting old relationships to return. Forward. Another behavior that sometimes appears during this stage is rewriting the story of the relationship. This process helps protect the narcissist's self-image. Forward. They may convince themselves that the relationship never mattered. They may describe you as impossible to please. Forward. They may exaggerate your mistakes while minimizing their own actions. Some tell friends and family a version of events that places them entirely in the role of the victim. Forward. Others insist they ended the relationship emotionally long before it actually ended. Forward. These stories often reduce the discomfort created by rejection because they replace painful reality with a narrative that feels easier to accept. Forward. This is why apparent indifference should never be confused with emotional growth. A person can look calm while remaining emotionally unchanged. Forward. They can stop calling while continuing the same unhealthy patterns elsewhere. Real growth becomes visible through consistent behavior over time. Forward. It shows itself in accountability. It appears in respect for boundaries. It accepts another person's decisions without manipulation or punishment. Forward. It does not demand admiration as proof of worth. It does not treat control as a substitute for connection. For you, however, forward, the most important part of this final stage has very little to do with the narcissist. That is the hidden lesson many people overlook. Forward. The moment you stopped organizing your life around their reactions, something inside you also began to change. Every day you maintained your boundaries. Forward. You strengthened a different psychological pattern. Instead of reacting automatically, you learned to pause. Instead of seeking constant validation, forward, you began rebuilding trust in your own judgment. Instead of measuring your value through someone else's approval, forward, you started discovering that your worth existed long before the relationship began. Many survivors spend months trying to predict whether the narcissist will return, forward, whether they will change, or whether they finally understand what they lost. Forward. Those questions feel important because the relationship trained the mind to stay focused on the other person's emotions. Forward. Healing quietly shifts that focus in another direction. The deeper question becomes whether you recognize your own growth, whether your peace still depends on their behavior, forward, or whether you have finally reached the point where their next move no longer determines your future. That quiet transformation is often the greatest change of all forward, because it is the one outcome the narcissist never expected, and the one that cannot be taken away once it truly belongs to you forward. The 5 stages we explored tell a story that many people never get to see. At first, there is denial. Then uncertainty begins to grow forward. That uncertainty turns into attempts to regain influence. Those attempts eventually collide with a painful challenge to the narcissist's self-image. Finally, forward, reality forces a choice. They may seek new validation. They may make one last attempt to reconnect. They may rewrite the story to protect themselves forward. Each stage looks different on the surface, but they are often connected by one underlying struggle. It is not simply the loss of a relationship forward. It is the gradual loss of perceived control. That is one of the biggest misconceptions about narcissistic behavior forward. Many people believe every emotional reaction after a breakup is proof of love, regret, or deep personal change. Sometimes genuine growth does happen forward. People are capable of changing when they accept responsibility and commit to honest self-reflection forward. But lasting transformation requires much more than emotional words spoken during a moment of crisis. It requires accountability. It requires consistency forward. It requires respecting another person's boundaries, even when those boundaries bring disappointment. There is another lesson that matters even more forward. Giving up is not the same as giving in. Walking away from a destructive cycle is not an act of revenge. It is not about making someone panic. It is not about proving who wins forward. It is about reclaiming something that slowly disappeared while you were trying to keep the relationship alive. Your peace, your confidence forward, your ability to trust your own judgment, your emotional freedom. Many people spend months studying every message, every silence forward, and every small change in the narcissist's behavior. They search for hidden meanings. They wonder whether the narcissist is thinking about them forward. They wonder whether regret has finally appeared. Those questions are understandable forward, but they also keep your attention locked on the very person you worked so hard to leave behind. Real healing begins when those questions slowly lose their power forward. The focus shifts from their behavior to your recovery, from their emotions to your future, from their approval to your self-respect forward. The greatest victory is not watching a narcissist panic. The greatest victory is reaching the point where their panic no longer controls your emotions forward. That is the moment the relationship truly changes. Not because they became someone different, but because you did forward. You stopped measuring your worth through someone else's attention. You stopped waiting for validation from the person who repeatedly withheld it forward. You stopped organizing your life around their reactions. That quiet shift is stronger than any argument, any apology, or any final message forward. If this video helped you understand these psychological patterns in a new way, support the channel by leaving a like and subscribing forward. More videos are coming that explore narcissism, attachment, emotional healing, and the hidden patterns that shape relationships forward. If someone in your life could benefit from this discussion, consider sharing this video with them as well. Now, there is one final question to think about forward. Which of these 5 stages do you believe reveals the most about a narcissist's true inner world forward? And at what moment did you realize that protecting your own peace had become more important than trying to understand theirs? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Forward. Your experience may help someone else take the first step toward their own emotional freedom.